made you become friends at the time was because you were kids and you were teenagers and you loved living life. But when you become an adult, you're you change, you evolve, and then you start liking different things. You start exploring different things, and so life changes. And so let me pull up these questions right here. Um, I'm gonna first of all, before I answer the questions that I see here, when forming a friendship, what are some of the things that you build boundaries on? So before I even talk about friendship, I will talk about what self is, how realizing yourself is so important. And at this age that you are in right now, it's going to be very hard to understand that. But I want to talk about that because I think in the time that we're living in, especially in the age of the digital era, it's important to understand that the friends that you formulate right now not only affect your habits, but they affect the decisions that you make. And that's very big as you grow older. The older you get, the more you need to make decisions for yourself and not for the friends who are around you. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that any of you have at the end of this said specific topic. So when you're forming friendships as a kid, you don't even look at yourself because you're just making friends with the people that are around you. But you guys you're between, Grace, you said between 8th grade to 12th grade, is that the age range? Okay. So at this time, I think it's very difficult to know yourself fully because you're still knowing yourself. And the thing is, you never stop knowing who you are until the day that you die. So that you never stop learning things about yourself. But what I can say to you right now is the friendships you have, let them be intentional friendships. And so let me answer the first question. When you form a friendship, should you create boundaries? A lot of people do not understand what boundaries are. So if one of you can tell me what is your understanding of what boundaries are? Can one of you just tell me? We're like 15 in the group, so I'll take an answer from anyone. What do you think boundaries are before I define what
It's
those
like a
are? Anyone can tell me what they think they are.
it's like a limit.
Like,
Is it Christiana?
Yes.
So we can't hear you. Do you mind making it louder?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Okay, now I can hear you.
So boundaries are like a limit that like you can give yourself or like a person gives you, I guess.
Which is completely right. Anyone else?
It's like a line that you've set for yourself, and for other people around you, like making sure that like this is where I stand, this is where we are as friends, but you can't really cross this line because it has nothing in it. It doesn't really have anything to do with you at that type of point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to word it.
No, you're completely right. Anyone else?
Sarah, were you about to answer earlier?
Okay. So no one else hasn't. I just want to make sure I don't like overskip anyone. So yeah, boundaries are very, very important, and I'll talk to you about one important boundary that I have with my friends, and that's the space boundary. Um, and it goes back to what Anne and Christiana said. It's the limit of how much you can give of yourself, and that's why I'm saying always know how much you can handle. When I look back at when I was 16 and 15, you guys all know the word called drama, right? Everyone knows it. Drama with your friends, drama with y'all know what I'm talking about, right? And I dealt with a lot of it at the time, not because it was something I liked, but I think it's created around you. It's around you. You have nothing to do with it, but it's looping around you, right? And I'm sure all of you know what that is. But it got to a point where the friends that I began to choose, we were less dramatic people. We didn't engage in anyone else's business. We didn't if we were not friends with other people, we didn't engage in their business. And so I also value space. I love spending time with myself a lot. And I know at your age, that's not a thing that you're going to understand right now, but it's a boundary that I've built with my friends, because in order for me to be able to be a good friend to you, I need to have space for myself in order for me to understand myself better. And so, even if you're not at the age where this completely makes sense to you, what I would say is journal your thoughts. I think it's very important at the age that you're in to journal whatever you think about on a daily basis. It doesn't matter whether good, bad, or ugly, or what has been said to you. I think it's important to journal your emotions. And this is where like friendship and emotions and self kind of come in, whereby you need to like journal your thoughts. And it's a good way for you to be able to kind of breathe out your thoughts without sharing them with anyone, because I'm sure many of you here have things that you go through you probably don't want to tell your friends, right? Like, can I get a show of hands if any of you go through things and you don't want to tell your friends or even your family members? Anyone? I'm 28 and I still have those. So if I'm 28, everyone on here should have their hand written up, because it's a circle of life. It's just what life is. And I think when you have friends at the time, it can be very draining, but you're not aware that it's draining, but because you're a teenager, you still don't know that you're getting drained. But what happens is when you become an adult, that affects you. So the best way to, I would say, number one, to be a good friend is always know what works for you. And that's how boundaries come in. And that's why I was using the space. Like, if I spend more time by myself, I'm going to be a better friend to you. I'm going to be able to listen to you better. I'm going to be able to um I'm going to be able to understand you better. Um, and so that's how now building strong bonds comes in. You know, I have bonds with certain people that I've known for 15 years, and we're really, really good friends, but we can go 6 months without talking to each other because life gets busy. The older you get, life gets busy, but you should be able to understand that the foundation of trust and being able to talk to each other in a very respectable way is okay. And before I answer the second question, I want to ask, what are the struggles you guys may have when it comes to friendship? What struggles do you feel you face in keeping friends and having good friendships? Just one struggle that you may have. It can be anything, or you can put it on the chat if you don't want to talk. Hi, Sam. I didn't know you were here.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry to put you on the spot. Sorry, guys.
I feel
Go ahead.
like other than you, like you said, your friends can go for like 6 months without talking and everything's the same. I feel for us like younger kids, for some reason, it feels like so much can happen in 6 months. For example, I feel like for younger kids, it's more like you have to like keep that connection like on a weekly or daily basis in order to keep the connection, or otherwise that like
Yeah.
the friendship will fade just like that.
So do you think that and just so that I make it clear too, even adults, life is constantly happening. In 6 months a lot can change. In 6 months I can be married. In 6 months I can something big can happen to me. So I definitely get what you're saying. So what I want to understand is to you, what's important to you, Sam, is constant check-ins with your friends. That's something that's very important to you, correct? Which should be. And how old are you, Sam, if I may ask?
I'm 15 turning 16.
Okay. So yeah, at that time, and that time is such a crucial age, because you're slowly becoming an adult, but you still have your friends from when you were younger. And do you have a cell phone, Sam? Do you have a cell phone? Okay. So, and I think that's a proper way to have check-ins with your friends. So definitely talk to your friends. But then how do you have proper boundaries with your friends in terms of when you want to like study or you need to do something with your parents? Like, what are the boundaries you would say, Sam, you have in balancing out your relationship with your friends and your relationship with other things? Do you think you have one too? Go ahead.
I definitely have boundaries, but the good thing about like my friend group, it's like a small circle. So like we're all on like mind frame. Like when it's time to like work hard, we all know we need to work hard. When it's all time to like, and we all understand each other, and we all like we in a sense we like think the same. For example, like we know which areas not to touch on, which areas to touch on, like as you said, like those boundaries. But overall, there are boundaries, but in my friend group, they're never pushed or pushed to their limit. So I think boundaries
Yeah.
are okay.
Yeah. And as you grow older, you'll realize how important boundaries are. And I'm so glad that you have boundaries at that age, because Sam, I don't think Njoki and I had boundaries at that. I don't think we understood what boundaries were at that age. But now that we're older, we know what those boundaries are and we don't cross them. And I also think a part of boundaries is when you have difficult conversations with your friends. Like, let me see, at 16, what was difficult for me to talk about? Let's say there was an issue that was going on with me and I wanted to share with my friend, and I was afraid that my friend wouldn't understand. And I think we did this a lot when we were younger, because we didn't know that friendships are a no judgment zone. So you also need to find a way to create a safe space with your friendships, whereby let's say all of us here are all in one friend group, okay? Like, let's do an assumption. So I come and tell Sam, hey Sam, I'm going through something and it's really, really crazy, but I'm gonna work through it. And then Sam gives me advice. If all of us are in the same friend group, Sam has no right to go tell Anne, Grace, or Christine, or Rachel, or whoever what I told them. It doesn't matter if we're in the same friend group. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? That's a boundary, because that's a boundary of trust that you're creating. Because I'm in a friend group of like 14 people, and these people are like family to me. I've known them for 15 years, but we all have our relationships individually, and we all also have a friendship collectively. So essentially what I'm saying is to form a strong bond, even in a friend group, you have to know your boundaries. You have to be able to, there should be an automated trust form that if I come and tell Sam something, Anne is not going to call me asking me about my business, which was only told to Sam. Yes, we're in the same friend group, but there needs to be boundaries. Does everyone understand where I'm coming from with that? Yeah, kind of get it. So, and that's how you form strong bonds. It's like, and I think I realized the thing with friendship is we think friendship is for everybody. So we assume that if that's my friend and and we're all friends, then we should all know each other's business. No, that's not how the real world works. The real world is that trust has to be formulated within a friend group and also within an individual relationship. And I think that is something you need to start thinking about right now. If I'm ever going to be a mom, I think it doesn't matter how old my kids are. I want them to know boundaries and how to be a good friend. And it's being a trustworthy person. And that's how you become a trustworthy person. Because essentially, many of you have dealt with the word drama. You know how that's how drama starts. I call up Sam. Sam, Anne said she likes you. Then Christiane calls Sam. Sam, it becomes a whole circulated thing that only needed to sit between two people. And I think that is something at your age is so important, because I tried to be like that a lot. That's why most of my friends were guys, because guys are more, they're more very strategic in how they keep their friendships. But I'm not saying that female friendships are not important. They're equally important. But like Sam is saying, you have to be on the same level with your friends. If your friends are all about doing the opposite, they're all about not being trustworthy. They're all about, not understanding your hard work. Your friends also have to respect you when you say no. And I think that is something that's not told too often to teenagers or young people. It's okay to say no to your friends. You can say no to your friends if they don't understand that, or say that you're not being cool, or you're not being a good friend, then they're not respecting your boundaries, because that is a huge boundary for me. I say no more to my friends than I even say yes to anything, because that is something I would actually encourage you to start practicing right now. Because when you become an adult older, you're going to say no all the time, because guess what? You're working, you're going to school, your life is getting busier, and you're going to be like, is it hanging out with friends or is it paying bills? Which is which? paying bills comes first before hanging out with your friends. So I would encourage you to have those boundaries, and also to create a boundary of no. Like Sam is saying, also like knowing your friend's boundaries. Talk about it. If your friend calls you up and says, hey, I didn't really like how you went around with this. It wasn't cool. Listen to your friend. That's also another thing that creates healthy boundaries in friendships, is listening to your friend and trying to understand. So if I would say right now you're having an issue with one of your friends and it's really bugging you, right? And you want to be able to talk to your friend about it, but you don't know how to go about it. And I think that's another thing, learning how to talk to your friends, is being able to say, hey, Grace, listen, the other day when we were hanging out, you did this and I didn't like it. For future reference, can you refrain? And Grace may be like, the first thing Grace will want to say is like, how, why? But that's not the first thing you need to do in friendships. The first thing you need to say is, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that offended you. Like, may I ask why? Like, or because maybe you may not understand, try to understand. Does anyone get what I'm saying on this aspect with friendship? Because I think sometimes what you want to do is be like, when someone told you that you wronged them, you want to be like, no, I didn't wrong you. You can never tell the other person that you didn't wrong them, because guess what offends me may not offend Grace. What offends Grace may not offend you, because we're different people. So it's also knowing to listen, to understand, and not listening to respond. And that goes into adulthood. You'll find that a lot in adulthood. It's something I'm still learning how to do. It's something you have to continuously learn and tell yourself, I'm going to listen to understand, because guess what? You'll never get upset. Like, anyone who knows me knows I do not get angry. I actually don't get mad. I only get disappointed, or I get like sad about things. But it's to make me really, really angry. Like, if Shira is angry, then it must be really, really bad. But if it's something that you come and talk to me about, or we can talk about, then I'm not going to get angry. So also be aware of how to be honest with your friends when they don't do something you like. And this brings me now to also creating a safe space with your friends and being able to call out your friends' habits. At 16, you're still learning yourself, you're still doing things. But if your friend pulls you up and says, hey, I don't like how you're treating someone else, you should be okay with it. Listen to the friend and be like, what can I do better? And that's how you start growing. And some of these things may seem like a big thing, but as you grow older, you'll realize that these things are so vital, especially when you're in college, Grace. I'm sure you're experiencing this right now, because more time, when I was your age, the thing is, I have stuck with the friends that I had at your age, and that's because we grew together and we now talk about hard conversations. We built spaces, we built boundaries. But you'll realize a lot of the friends that you had also, you'll not be friends with them in adulthood, because when you make a choice to grow as a person, they're friends who are not growing with you. So easily those bonds become just superficial friendships, whereby you see each other at a party and you're like, hey, how are you? And life goes on. You see each other at a barbecue, hey, how's life? And life goes on. But if you want these strong boundaries, I would say one is to be completely honest with each other. And not honest with each other whereby you're over crossing boundaries. No, honest with each other enough to say, hey, these are my boundaries. Hey, this is how much I can handle. Because even as you grow older, your friends will have more problems and they'll want to come talk to you about it. But sometimes, nope, it's got to come back and people are going to be like, hey, like, Sam, it's great that you're telling me all this, but I'm at a capacity where I cannot handle this right now. Can we talk about it at a later day? Some days you could be grieving. Some day you could have a really hard test. Some days you just woke up in a bad mood and the first thing your friends want to do is tell you about how their life is terrible. You don't want to listen to that. And not because you're a bad friend. It's because that is life. The same human experience you are going through is the same human experience I'm going through. So being able to respect your friends' boundaries, and if they tell you and if they communicate to you, hey, like, I have a huge test today, I cannot give energy to this right now. Let's talk about it maybe in a week when I'm done with my exams. Be okay with that. That is part of your friend saying no. And so I'm going to say, I said, taking space is important. Saying no is important. Listening to understand and not listening to respond. That's a big one. Being honest about where you are mentally, physically, spiritually. You need to be honest with your friends about that. Even if you don't understand yourself, be honest with your friends. Like, hey, I'm going through this sad emotion right now and I don't know what it is. So if you guys feel like I'm acting out of line, just know this is what's going on and I'm working on it. Does that make sense for everybody? I don't loop in and feel like I'm not making sense. Okay. And so, yeah, I struggle with saying no to my friends. I didn't even know that was on the question. So I'm glad I talked about that. So I'll deep into that a little bit. The reason why you struggle saying no with your friends is because you want to be accepted by your friends. We all want to be accepted by our friends, right? We all want to like get along and feel like we belong and things like that. But when you need to say no to your friends, you now need to turn it around as a you're doing it for me. When I owned a business and I lived in North Carolina with my friends here never understood why I would not make trips or why I would not come through for certain things. They were always like, Shira, why are you not making things? And I'm like, no, I can't make it, guys. I know I said I'll try and make it. I know I said I'll make it, but no. And so some of them who've moved out of the state and they're no longer here, they're always like, oh my God, Shiro, I get why you could not come to things. The thing is, life gets busy. And at your age, life is not busy yet. So I'm guessing when you're saying no to your friends, it's because maybe your parents wanted you to do a chore or you needed to be somewhere for school or a practice or something or study, right? When you're doing those things for yourself, studying is for yourself. It's for your higher education. It's for you to grow in the academia field, right? So you have to say no to your friends. When perhaps you can't play and you want to spend time with yourself and just read a book, listen to music, go for a walk, go for a bike ride by yourself without your friends, it's okay to say no to that. It's completely okay to say no to that. And when your friends can't understand that, sometimes have grace and patience with them too, because they may be the best of friends. And at the time, they may not completely understand why you're saying no, but always understand that saying no is a power of your own. It's your power. When you become a yes man to everything or a yes woman to everything, then you're never going to know what powers you have and what control you have for yourself. And that's so important. At your age, I wish I had that, because at your age, I'd get so mad when my parents are like, no, you need to stay home. I'm like, no, I want to go out. Like, I just want to go out. Now I'm 28. I prefer to stay in the house more than anything. I hate being outside. Unless we need to meet with my friends like once a week or every 2 weeks, because I realize how saying no is so important. So balance that out, as much as, Sam was saying, you want to do check-ins, you can do check-ins on FaceTime. You don't have to see each other. COVID has taught you that, I'm sure. Like, you don't have to do this check-ins over the phone. Like, you don't have to see each other every weekend. Sometimes spend time with your siblings or spend time with your parents, because I'm moving to London in a few months and I have been trying to spend time with my parents that way, because I know after I move to London, I'm probably not going to spend as much time as I do with them now, and somehow it's a silver lining with COVID. COVID made this possible for me to hang around with my parents, because I would have already moved to London if COVID hadn't come through. But my case in point here, start to learn these things early. You don't have to say yes all the time to your friends. And I know when you say that no, it feels like, man, I'm such a party pooper, or I'm like so lame. No, you're not. And even, like I said, no is power. Just to say the words, no, I can't make it. And in turn, if another friend of yours says, no, and I can't make this, be like, oh, okay, all right. Or be like, hey, what do you have to do? Oh, okay, all right. Be okay with that. Be okay when your friends say no to you. Because once you're okay with that, you will always be okay with saying no. It's a two-way thing. It's not a thing of whereby by like you're the only friend who says no all the time, and then these other friends say yes. It doesn't work like that. There needs to be balance, and balance is very important in friendships. Make sure you have that balance when you're saying no. So before I move on to the emotional content of this kind of discussion, does anyone have questions, commentary, anything to ask me before we move on? And you can ask me anything, honestly. This is a safe space, I think. So you can ask me all the kind of questions you want to ask. I am here to answer and listen.
One thing, if you are okay with me adding on to that,
Yeah.
I like 2 lessons I learned in my first year of college was definitely the importance of boundaries. Like she says, life does get busier, and you had to start prioritizing. Not only that, but boundaries are so important because you realize your friends and what's happening with them affects you too. Um, for example, if you have a friend that they are always coming to you as their therapist, like you're acting as a therapist to them. They're always laying down their issues on you. They're not like, you love them, of course, but they're not always like a positive and bright and happy all the time. You quickly realize that that does have an effect on you, or even just taking in your friend's issues and just giving advice that does have an effect on you, and it's not a very positive one when you're getting tired of it. And I personally learned to, sometimes be like, when they're like, hey, can you come over to talk? I can't right now. If I'm dealing with my own things and you want me to handle your own things, it's gonna be too much. Not because I'm not saying it because I don't like. I would really want to emphasize, I get that everybody, of course, would want to be a great friend and be there 100%. But you have to be there for yourself first. Sometimes you have to realize, like she said, sometimes it's because of a test. Sometimes it's because of another obligation. Sometimes it's just because you've run out of energy for that, and it's important to be able to say, hey, I can't do that tonight, I can't talk tonight, can we reschedule, can we do this another time when I'm feeling better? And it's up to you what you want to tell them the reason for it. Sometimes I'll be like, I just can't tonight. Sometimes I would let them know, like, hey, I can't handle anymore right now. I mean, I would tell them I can see you, but if it's going to be, in a way that's going to drain me, we can't do that. But if you want to just, instead of just talking about it, maybe let's engage in some self-care for both of us. Maybe let's go out for both of us and just get away from the situation instead of always talking about something that's down here. That's another strategy towards that. Like, your no, sometimes it's not a solid no, it's a no to that, but let's do this. Sometimes it is a solid no, and I just.
And Grace, to add on to, before you give your second lesson, it's also important for you guys to know, like, you don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe anyone an explanation. And I know this is kind of hard to grasp when I say it in such an aggressive and harsh way, but the truth of the matter is, when you're an adult, now for Grace and I, people who are in college or up, if you say no to your friends, you don't owe them an explanation. You really do not know that. Like, it's your business, whatever it is that you're doing. But when it comes to friendship, sometimes you feel that obligation to be like, oh no, hey, I can't make it, I gotta do this, which is fine. But you can see how Grace is giving examples of, like, sometimes it's a no and it's a no. I don't have to tell you anything else but that no. Or on the other side of it, it's like, no, hey, today it's kind of busy for me. And that's that. And I do want to emphasize, that is good friendship. That is good friendship. When you actually say no and you got to take care of your own, it is okay. That's being a good friend. And I know we're raised to think that you know, our culture sometimes it's like, no, you gotta see your friends, you gotta talk to your friends about stuff, you gotta do this. Yes, you do, but not all the time. You know, I'm sure, Grace, in college you're figuring it out, that some things you just need to solve on your own, and you can tell your friends later. But there are days I go through things, and I'll share with my friends later. I'm like, hey, this happened and I resolved it like this, because you'll be at a mental space where you can share, and you're able to like decompress, if that makes sense. And yeah, I love that self-care idea too. That's a good one, Grace. Love that.
Yeah. And then, so like that was the boundaries lesson was something that I definitely learned. I think for me in high school, the boundaries were when I had tests. I was very busy and involved in school. I'll just be like, no, I have a test. I can't do that. No, I have something. Or I'll just be like, no, like she said. And then the other lesson was expectations when it comes to friends. So like on the other side of things, me realizing, you know, not everybody is going to show up as a friend in the way that you want them to, and that's okay. So like sometimes you might be the one receiving a no, and like she said, you have to accept that too, you know. Or sometimes, you know, you might want your friend to go out and, you know, when you tell them you're feeling down, maybe the way you would want to receive something was like for them to go out and get you food and do this and do that, but they're not. If you don't communicate that, if they don't want to do that, if they're not in a place to do that, that might not happen. And so if your expectation is so high that you're just like, well, why aren't you a stellar friend who's like, you know, going through, you know, hell and back for me? That's not always going to happen for every situation. And you have to realize, like, you know, you can give a no, but you can also take a no sometimes.
Wow, I love that. I really love that. And I'll be honest with you that I'm still learning how to do that, because I'm the type of friend who shows up. Like I'm a show up kind of friend all the time. And recently I was in the hospital maybe 3 months ago, and one of my friends, who's a really good friend of mine, she didn't call me or check in on me, and it bothered me. And so I texted her and I was like, hey, like, what's up? Because, you know, she just lost someone. I also was a bit selfish and I didn't realize it at the time, because she was grieving, right? She's going through her own grieving process. Like, why didn't you reach out to me? Like, what's going on? And so she was just like, I don't have the capacity to talk to you about this right now. Can we set a date for it later? And I think we talked about it 2 months. But even in those between 2 months, I was still a good friend. Like I wasn't holding, you know how, Grace, sometimes when people don't show up for you and you don't communicate it, you start holding to grudges and it becomes a big thing. All of a sudden you don't like this person out of something so small. That's why communication is really important. Like Grace is saying, like, I told my friend how I felt about it, and she was like, okay, we'll deal with this later, but not right now. So later on, we talked about it, and she was just like, always know that I appreciate how you show up for me, and I may not show up for you the way you may want me to show up for you, but I'll always show up for you. And so I'm also learning that, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to talk about expectations in a little bit, but I'm so glad you touched upon that, because, and I also think, as much as I'm pointing out that maybe, you know, some of these things are adulthood, you know, for maybe college students and up, I think, for me, I think it's an important time for you to practice these things that we're talking about. Because if I knew what I knew now about friendships, I would have run my life very, very differently when I was a teenager, or when I was in 8th grade or whatever. My life would have been very different. And yes, I was always involved in school. So I was never with like my Kenyan friends a lot, because they were not involved in school stuff. I was always with like my American friends, because we're involved together in a lot of things, a lot of clubs, a lot of student stuff. So I think to, you know, what Grace and I are like trying to mention to you guys is try to practice these things now. You don't have to be fully perfect at them. I mean, I'm almost 30 and I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect. You know, you constantly learn something new. And the thing is, and I'm sure, Grace, the older you get, you're going to get to this point of like, you think you've worked on something, and then something else pops up and it's like, oh no, you haven't worked on it. You still have to work on it. So what I would encourage you guys, especially now that you're wherever you are, form intentional friendships. And intentional friendships include all the things we're mentioning: boundaries, space, having time to yourself, self-care, which is very, very important. Your self-care right now should probably be running outside, or watching a movie here and there, or just reading a book, things like that. Spend time with yourself, even if it's an hour a day. That way you can be able to have more output, and that is so important for your mental well-being. You know, your mental health is so crucial at this stage, because you'll find out the older you get, you realize that there's some things within yourself that you still have to work on that affect you mentally. So I definitely encourage you guys to start practicing these things that we may mention about. And that's why I'm so keen on saying, if you have questions, ask. If you have a situation, ask. And I'll put my email address on here. If any of you guys want to email me or ask me any questions or talk to me about anything, I'm always quick to responding via email. So you can reach out to me personally. But again, Grace, I appreciate what your commentary as well. So did you have anything else to add before we move on, or does anyone have any questions as well, or commentary, whatever? No, none. Grace, did you want to add anything else before we move on?
I think it was just those two pieces.
Okay. All right. I think you touched on expectations beautifully, so I don't feel the need to do that. I think yours was well said because I added on top of it. But let me look at, so how do you help someone with their emotions even when you don't understand? Wow. This is a deep one. I have to actually think about it. So for someone like myself who has dealt with depression and anxiety, I'll give you a scenario that happened to me after right after I came back from London earlier this year. So it was, I think, January, February, right? I came back, and a part of me has always wanted to live in England, well, Europe per se. So being in England, seeing my friends and families there, and just seeing my future school and just life there, I think coming back just shook me a little bit, because a lot of things were happening around me for my friends that were great things. And then sometimes you compare yourself to your friends because you think they're doing better than you, or they're better than you, just one of those situations. And so I really got into, I really felt in, I fell into like a deep depression mode, of whereby I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see